Billionaire discovers fiancé's dirty plan and proposes to the maid instead. The late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the Carter estate. Tucked in the hills outside Los Angeles, the mansion stood like a monument to power and precision, a modern fortress of glass, stone, and ambition. It was the kind of place where the air seemed conditioned not only in temperature but in tone, where every corridor whispered of secrets and success. Isabella Moreno wiped the last bit of polish from the marble counter and exhaled. She'd finished her tasks early, as always, and had the place to herself. The other staff had left hours ago, and Charlotte Whitmore, the mansion's future mistress, was supposed to be at a fitting downtown. For once, there was silence, precious, uninterrupted silence. She climbed the stairs hesitantly, drawn by something she couldn't name. In the master bedroom, sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, making everything appear softer than it was. And there, displayed like a crown jewel, was the veil. Delicate, almost translucent. It looked as though it might disappear if one breathed too hard. Isabella stepped closer, heart racing. She didn't dare touch it at first. Her hands, accustomed to cleaning chemicals and hard labor, hovered in the air like two guilty witnesses. But eventually, as if in a trance, she lifted the veil and placed it over her head. She turned to the full-length mirror, expecting to laugh at herself. But when she saw her reflection, her dark hair framed by lace, her eyes wide with wonder, something inside her cracked open. A memory flickered, her mother sewing late into the night in Sao Paulo, whispering stories of hope. A life that once held numbers, order, respect. Before papers, before silence, before hiding. The doorknob turned. Ethan Carter stepped into the room, holding a leather folder. He froze mid-step. Their eyes locked. For one eternal second, neither moved. Isabella yanked the veil off her head with trembling hands. I'm sorry, sir, she stammered. I wasn't going to harm it. I know I shouldn't be here. Ethan blinked. He had expected to be alone, to grab his forgotten investor files and return to the city. Instead, he stood face to face with a woman draped in his fiancée's wedding veil. Charlotte's veil. What the hell is going on? A shrill voice shattered the tension. Charlotte Whitmore appeared in the doorway, her designer heels clicking like gunfire on the floor. She looked from Ethan to Isabella and back, eyes flaring with suspicion and disgust. She's wearing my veil? Charlotte's voice rose in pitch. You let her touch my veil? Her? She probably came straight from scrubbing toilets. Isabella's face flushed deep crimson. Ethan stepped forward. It wasn't like that. She's a maid, Ethan, Charlotte snarled. She's here to serve, not to play dress-up with my life. Fire her. Right now. Isabella stood still. She did not cry. Not yet. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper. I apologize. I wasn't trying to offend anyone. Charlotte scoffed. Do you even speak English properly? Ethan's jaw tightened. That's enough. She violated my privacy. She violated our bedroom. And she's undocumented, isn't she? Charlotte hissed. You're putting the entire household at risk. I want her gone before I get back from my final fitting. Isabella turned toward the door, her dignity clinging by a thread. But her gaze lingered for a moment on Ethan's desk. Papers lay scattered. One email header stood out, subject line in bold, final phase of plan, after the wedding. Her eyes darted to the sender's name, Michael Alvarez. Her pulse quickened. Michael, Ethan's longtime business partner. She couldn't help it. Her mind, trained for details and finance in a former life, snapped into analysis. She saw enough in those lines. Charlotte forwarding Ethan's confidential reports, business terminology embedded in romantic language, timelines coinciding with post-wedding restructuring. There was no doubt. They were conspiring against him. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. A cold dread filled her bones. Moments later, Officer Brandt from Immigration Enforcement stood in the foyer, flanked by two agents. We received a tip about an undocumented employee at this address, he said calmly. Charlotte folded her arms smugly. Ethan turned pale. Isabella felt her lungs collapse. Please, don't take me, she whispered. I need to see identification and documentation, Brandt stated. She's my fiancée, Ethan said suddenly, his voice sharp as a blade. Everyone froze again. Charlotte blinked. What? Brandt raised an eyebrow. Fiancée. Ethan stepped beside Isabella, slipping a hand around her waist. We've been keeping it quiet. I was going to make an announcement after the wedding plans with Charlotte were canceled. Charlotte let out a sound that was half laughter, half growl. You're insane. Isabella Moreno, Ethan continued, is my fiancée. We're getting married in a few months. I take full responsibility for her status. She lives here. With me. Isabella stared at him, stunned. The agents exchanged glances. Brant finally nodded. We'll need to file an affidavit. You'll hear from us. But no further action today. When they left, silence reigned once more. Charlotte stormed out without another word. Isabella pulled away from Ethan. Why did you do that? He looked exhausted. Because I believe you. And because I just read that email. She held his gaze. You're not just a maid, he said softly. Who are you, really? Her voice trembled. I was an accountant. Back in Brazil. Before everything fell apart. He didn't ask more. Not yet. But the seed was planted. Not just of suspicion, but of something else. Something neither of them dared name. Yet. And in the corner of the room, the veil lay crumpled on the floor. No longer a symbol of belonging, but of betrayal, transformation, and the first spark of something unexpected. The night settled like a heavy curtain over the Carter estate. Isabella sat alone in the guest room Ethan had hastily prepared for her fingers trembling as she clutched a cup of tea. She hadn't spoken a word since the immigration agents left. Her heart still raced in panic, not from fear of being deported. That moment had passed, but from what Ethan had done. He had lied to the federal government. For her, a stranger. Or at least, she thought she was a stranger to him. Across the mansion, Ethan stood in his study, the door locked, the office dimly lit by a desk lamp. His eyes scanned the printed emails, his expression grim. Michael Alvarez and Charlotte Whitmore. Two people he trusted, one professionally, one personally. Now both had betrayed him in tandem. The plan was simple. After Ethan married Charlotte, he would step down from day-to-day operations and take a more ceremonial role. Michael would assume control as CEO. Charlotte would control Ethan's voting shares, all under the guise of marital unity. He'd been a pawn. And somehow, the woman who'd exposed it wasn't one of his Ivy League analysts or boardroom insiders. It was Isabella, the housekeeper he barely noticed until that very afternoon. He returned to the foyer and stood for a moment, staring at the mirror where it all began. Her reflection, that veil, that moment of stillness that had cracked open his life. Upstairs, Isabella's thoughts were elsewhere. She had crossed oceans, borders, and despair to get to this country. Her past clung to her like shadows. Not just the poverty, but the shame of going from respected professional to invisible laborer. She remembered the day she forged her first fake ID. The night she crossed into Arizona in the trunk of a van. The phone call telling her that her younger brother had died of an overdose while she cleaned someone else's bathtub. She'd buried everything. Her diploma, her pride, her name. And now this man had pulled her into a lie with no end. The next morning, Ethan stood in the kitchen holding a tray of breakfast. For you, he said awkwardly, placing it in front of her on the small glass table near the garden. I can make my own food, she murmured. I know, he replied. But after yesterday, I figured you deserved something more than leftovers. She didn't smile. They'll come back. He nodded. That's why I need your help. Her eyes narrowed. You lied to save me. Now you want something. I want you to help me stop them. Charlotte and Michael. I can't do it alone. She said nothing. I know what I'm asking is unfair, he admitted. But you saw something I didn't. You understood what those emails meant immediately. You worked in finance, didn't you? She flinched. I need someone I can trust. And apparently, that's not my fiancé. Isabella looked away. I was head accountant at a multinational in Sao Paulo, she finally said. Before the layoffs. Before the protests. Before my country broke me. Ethan sat down. Then maybe it's time to fix something. For both of us. Charlotte slammed the door to her Mercedes in front of the Whitmore estate, her hands shaking with rage. The humiliation of being dismissed like some accessory in front of an immigrant MAID hadn't worn off. She opened her phone and dialed Michael. He's spiraling, she hissed. He just told immigration she's his fiancée. That woman. That maid. Michael paused. That's not ideal. No, it's insane, she barked. He knows something. Did he read the email? I don't know. But he looked at me like he had. Then accelerate the plan, Michael said coldly. Get control of his shares before he can move. Charlotte's voice cracked. He doesn't love me, Michael. Maybe he never did. Then use what he does love. The company. His reputation. We go public with the merger next week. Once the media is involved, he won't risk a scandal. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Ethan had cleared the guest bedroom closet and turned it into a temporary workspace for Isabella. She was hesitant at first, afraid to step over boundaries, physical, social, emotional, but gradually began reviewing internal reports. And what she found stunned her. There were discrepancies going back 2 years, offshore transactions, shell companies, falsified statements signed by Michael himself. You trusted him with everything, she murmured one evening, scrolling through files. I needed to. He was my best friend. But he's been bleeding you dry. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, the numbers would balance. I didn't want to believe it. And Charlotte. She came into the picture right when I started questioning things. She distracted me. From the company. From myself. Isabella leaned forward. You said you wanted to fix things. Then let's fix them. From the inside. That night, as Ethan walked her to her room, their fingers brushed. A second too long. The air between them shifted. He stepped back. Sorry. I shouldn't. She shook her head quickly. No. Me neither. They stood in silence before she slipped inside. Neither saw Charlotte's car parked at a distance, watching. Later that week, as Isabella accompanied Ethan to a discreet investor dinner, dressed in a simple black dress borrowed from an old friend, murmurs filled the room. Who was she? A translator? A new assistant? But then she spoke. She explained Ethan's latest projections with ease, challenged a skeptical analyst on cost structures, and quoted foreign policy that impressed even the sharpest minds at the table. Slowly, the tone shifted. Investors leaned forward. Ethan watched, stunned. After the dinner, he turned to her. You were incredible. She shrugged. I used to do this every day. Not like that. They stopped in front of the elevator. Isabella, he began. I don't know what this is between us, but it's real, isn't it? She looked up at him. Don't ask me that. Not yet. Before the elevator doors closed, she added, but yes, I think it is. Back in his office, Charlotte had already planted her final blow, an anonymous call to immigration, stating that Isabella was faking a relationship for citizenship. The agents would be back, and next time, they wouldn't leave so easily. The following Monday brought an unusual hush to the Carter estate. Isabella sat at the edge of the study couch, laptop open, eyes fixed on the cascade of transactions from a subsidiary Ethan hadn't known even existed. Ethan, she said, fingers tapping the screen. This company, Bright Shore Holdings, was created 6 months after your father's memorial. The first deposit came from one of your own development funds. Ethan furrowed his brow. That fund was frozen after the board split. No one should have been able to touch it. Well, Michael did. And then Bright Shore started purchasing materials, hiring ghost consultants, issuing dividends to a shell in Belize. Which traces back to Charlotte, he murmured, the horror rising in his throat. She's a silent partner in at least 3 of those shells, Isabella confirmed. You weren't just being replaced. You were being erased. Ethan stood up abruptly, knocking over a half-empty mug. I need to confront him. Isabella grabbed his arm. Not yet. You'll alert him. We need leverage first. At that exact moment, Charlotte and Michael were preparing their next move from a penthouse in Westwood. Michael poured whiskey into a tumbler while Charlotte lit a cigarette she wasn't supposed to smoke. He hasn't made a press statement yet, Michael said. Charlotte exhaled. That's because he's still trying to look honorable. Michael's eyes were sharp. Then we give him a reason not to. She looked up. What do you mean? Michael slid a document across the table. It was a complaint draft. Fraud. Tax evasion. Embezzlement. All signed in Ethan's name. Fabricated. Detailed. Leak this anonymously to the press. The board will panic. They'll sideline him until this is cleared up. Meanwhile, we finalize the merger and we walk away billionaires, Charlotte whispered. At the estate, Ethan received a call from his assistant warning him of a possible anonymous accusation. The press would come next. Isabella sat down beside him, her voice calm. Then we go on the offensive. I still have access to the accounting network from when you made me your assistant. If I can pull original transaction logs from before they were overwritten, we might prove that Michael spoofed your credentials. Ethan looked at her with something between admiration and awe. You're not just saving me, Isabella. You're fighting for me. She swallowed. I'm fighting for the truth. And for myself, too. Later that evening, Ethan walked her back to her room. The hallway was dark, hushed. He stopped at her door. "Thank you," he said, "for not running." She smiled, tired. "I've been running all my life. Maybe it's time to stop." He leaned in, slowly. She didn't pull away. Their lips met, softly at first. Then with the desperate gravity of two people pulled together by circumstances neither asked for. But in the shadows, behind the staircase, a pair of eyes watched. Charlotte. And this time, she wouldn't just retaliate with whispers. The morning papers were merciless. Carter Corp under federal investigation. CEO involved in tax fraud scheme, sources say. Ethan Carter silent amid allegations. Ethan's phone buzzed nonstop. Directors, journalists, investors. The world that had once bowed at his feet was now circling like vultures. "I have to speak," Ethan muttered. "If I don't defend myself, they'll believe it." Isabella sat opposite him, her hair in a low bun, face lit by her screen's glow. "Not yet. We release our evidence first. If you go public now, it'll just seem like damage control." He nodded. Together, they launched into a plan. Isabella compiled documents, metadata, and timestamps from the original accounting system, which Michael had clearly manipulated. Ethan arranged for a forensic audit to be performed in secret by a third-party firm in San Francisco. They agreed. Once verified, they would hold a press conference and release everything. But the storm outside wasn't waiting. Charlotte struck hard. At the next board meeting, she entered uninvited, draped in a tailored white suit, and declared in front of the directors, "Ethan is unstable. He's living with a woman who's here illegally and claimed falsely to be his fiancée in front of federal officers. He's exposing the company to criminal risk." Murmurs echoed around the table. Ethan stood, calm. "You forgot to mention your betrayal, Charlotte." "Excuse me," she scoffed. "I know everything. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, your partnership with Michael, and the forged complaint you leaked." The room fell silent. One of the older board members, Mr. Richardson, leaned forward. "Do you have proof?" "I will. Within 48 hours. Charlotte smirked. "You better. Because if you don't, I'll make sure every news outlet in America believes I was the one being abused." After the meeting, Ethan and Isabella returned home. She was pale. "She'll come for me. I won't let her," Ethan promised. But that night, the attack didn't come through the press or immigration. It came through fire. A small blaze ignited in the garden shed, where Isabella had been organizing old documents. Flames licked up the side of the storage wall before the sprinkler system stopped it. The fire marshal later confirmed it was arson. No fingerprints. But Charlotte had left her mark. "I have to go," Isabella said the next morning. "I can't put your home, your company, your life in danger." Ethan held her hand. "I won't let them win. You don't have a choice." She began to pack. A single duffel bag, the one she brought from Brazil. As she reached the front door, Ethan stood in her path. "Then give me one reason to let you walk away." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "Because if I stay, I'll keep loving you. And if I love you, I'll be the reason you lose everything." Ethan cupped her face gently. "Then let me love you back. Fully. Freely. No more pretending." She closed her eyes. "Marry me, Isabella. For real. For everything we've been through. Everything we've yet to fight." Her breath caught. "Say yes," she whispered. "Only if you promise this marriage will never be a lie." He smiled, tears in his own eyes. It never was. A week later, the Carter estate looked nothing like the place it had been. The staff was gone. The windows, once spotless, were streaked with ash residue from the attempted fire. Security cameras had been installed on every corner, and private investigators moved in and out quietly with laptops, thumb drives, and briefcases. At the center of it all was Isabella, no longer a ghost in a borrowed uniform, but a woman reclaiming her ground. She moved with purpose now, heels clicking over the marble floors, sleeves rolled up, hands stained with highlighters and not ink. In a meeting with Ethan's legal team, she presented 3 potential legal strategies to expose Michael's financial fraud. "You have 2 options," she said to Ethan, her voice even. "Burn them legally, or bury them publicly." He smirked. "I always preferred both." The investigators had unearthed enough data to link Bright Shore Holdings to at least 4 illegal operations. But one file stood out, an encrypted folder titled for CW. Ethan's heart sank. Charlotte Whitmore. They cracked the password. Her birthday. Inside were voice memos. Dozens. He pressed play. I told Michael we needed to push Ethan toward burnout. He's too emotional, too idealistic. Once he cracks, the board will turn on him, and I can claim I tried to intervene. That's the angle. That's what the media eats up. Ethan closed his laptop. She never loved me. Isabella sat across from him. I think she wanted to love you, but she loved power more. That night, as Ethan stood on the balcony, Isabella joined him. The city lights stretched like a sea of fire below them. A different kind of fire. One that illuminated instead of destroyed. Have you ever wanted to forget who you were? She asked quietly. All the time, he answered. She nodded slowly. I used to think if I worked hard enough, I could erase the girl who crossed the border hidden beneath crates of paint thinner. But she never left me. She's still here. She's the one who figured out Michael's code, who stood up to Charlotte. You didn't erase her, Ethan said. You evolved her. They stood in silence, shoulder to shoulder. Then Ethan said, I want the world to know about us. Ethan, I'm not hiding you. Not anymore. Her voice trembled. It's not about hiding. It's about surviving. I know. But now, we fight together. The next morning, Ethan announced a press conference. Not to defend himself, but to accuse. Within hours, Charlotte and Michael panicked. A meeting was arranged. Neutral ground. A penthouse suite overlooking Beverly Hills. When Ethan and Isabella entered, the air was thick with dread. You're making a mistake, Michael warned, sipping whiskey with shaking hands. No, Isabella replied, stepping forward. You made the mistake. You underestimated someone who once balanced an $80 million Brazilian portfolio in her 20s, who can speak 5 languages, who never needed your approval to be dangerous. Charlotte's face turned pale. You've changed her. Ethan smiled faintly. No, she just stopped hiding. Isabella dropped a flash drive on the table. We'll give this to the authorities in 48 hours. Unless you do something first. Charlotte narrowed her eyes. What? Resign. Publicly. Apologize. Donate your profits to the Carter Foundation. Then disappear. Michael barked a laugh. You think we'll give up everything? No, Ethan said calmly. We think you'll give up enough to avoid prison. They left. Behind them, for the first time, Michael's voice cracked. She's not bluffing. Charlotte stared at the skyline. She's not the maid anymore. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of what came next. Her life had been one long cycle of escape. But now, she was being asked to stay, to build, to be seen. Ethan found her sitting on the floor of the guest room, sorting through a shoebox of old photos. In one picture, she stood with her mother, younger, smiling. Poor but proud. She was everything, Isabella whispered. She scrubbed offices all night so I could study during the day. When I left Brazil, she begged me not to disappear. Where is she now? In Boston. Legally. Working at a cleaning company that treats her better than most. Ethan knelt beside her. Then let's bring her here. Let her see who you've become. Isabella shook her head. It's not that easy. But it could be. A week later, while Isabella was reviewing contracts in Ethan's office, a knock interrupted her. Ethan appeared at the doorway with a small smile. There's someone here to see you. When Isabella walked to the foyer, she froze. Isabelina. Her mother, Dona Luisa, stood there, short, round-faced, dressed in simple jeans and a pale sweater, eyes brimming with tears. May. They ran into each other's arms. Ethan watched from a distance, his throat tight. He had contacted Luisa weeks earlier, after the veil incident. He wanted Isabella to have someone on her side who had known her strength long before he did. That evening, around the dining table, laughter returned to the mansion. Even as the storm outside brewed, with journalists, lawyers, and enemies still circling, inside, a fragile peace had begun. But Michael wasn't finished. 2 days later, at a Carter Corp investor meeting, he appeared unannounced, disheveled, sweating. He barged into the boardroom, shoving past security. They're lying, he shouted. They're using a fake relationship to hide an illegal immigrant who's blackmailing the CEO. Gasps filled the room. Isabella stood, calm. Mr. Alvarez, I suggest you leave before you make things worse. You think you're safe, he spat. Charlotte tried to kill herself because of this. A beat of silence. Ethan stood. Get him out. Security moved in. As Michael was dragged away, he screamed. She's not who you think she is. None of this is real. She's still a criminal. Isabella stood frozen. Later that night, She sat on the garden bench, knees to her chest. Ethan came to her. Don't listen to him. He's right, she whispered. My past is a crime. I lied. I crossed borders. I used fake documents. You survived. She looked up, eyes red. But I can't erase it. You don't have to. Because that past brought you here. It made you you. She swallowed hard. I've been hiding my whole life, she said. But I'm tired. I want to live. He took her hand. Then let's live. Together. She nodded, slowly. And in that moment, the war wasn't over. But the flight was. The days that followed were filled with cautious optimism. The investigation into Michael Alvarez moved quickly once the forensic audit results were shared with the FBI. Ethan's name was cleared, at least internally, and his reinstatement as CEO was only a matter of days. Investors began returning. The board softened. The house felt lighter. But something inside Isabella remained tangled. She stood in the garden one morning, watching Donna Luisa hum as she clipped roses, her mother's hands steady and worn. The same hands that had once pulled her from the chaos of Sao Paulo into survival. You deserve to rest, Isabella said. Her mother smiled. And you deserve to stop running. That same afternoon, Isabella met with an immigration attorney Ethan had hired in secret. The woman was kind but direct. We have a case. With your qualifications and community contributions, we can pursue a humanitarian waiver. Ethan's marriage proposal complicates things, but also strengthens them. Isabella shook her head. I'm not marrying him to stay. I'm marrying him because I love him. The lawyer smiled. Then it's the right kind of complication. But the calm was short-lived. A package arrived at the estate 2 days later. No return address. No note. Inside was a hard drive. Isabella plugged it in cautiously. It was filled with raw surveillance footage. Michael's voice narrating. Clips of her from years ago. Entering the country. The fake IDs she had used. Employment records under different names. A detailed profile, likely compiled by a private investigator. She slammed the lid of the laptop closed, trembling. Donna Luisa sat beside her. What's wrong, Filha? I can't keep pretending I'm not a risk to him. That night, Isabella didn't sleep. She sat in the corner of the room watching Ethan breathe, his chest rising and falling, his arms stretched across the empty half of the bed, the space waiting for her. By morning, she was gone. She left only a note. You gave me everything I never thought I deserved. But I won't let you pay for who I was. I love you enough to walk away. Ethan found it before sunrise. By noon, every staff member, driver, and contact had been mobilized. But Isabella had vanished. For 2 days, Ethan scoured every place she might have gone. Bus stations, shelters, Brazilian churches. He called her friends. He called immigration offices under aliases. Even contacted consulates. Nothing. On the third morning, Ethan sat in the kitchen, head buried in his hands, when Donna Luisa entered. She left to protect you, she said, calm but firm. I don't care, Ethan muttered. I don't need protection. I need her. She doesn't believe that. Then make her believe it. Luisa placed a hand on his shoulder. You love her. With everything I have. Then it's time you stop trying to erase her past and start honoring it. That afternoon, Ethan did something Isabella never expected. He went live on national television. In front of a full press room, he stood at the Carter Foundation's annual gala and said, Tonight was supposed to be about philanthropy, but I can't talk about giving back until I acknowledge the person who gave me more than I ever gave myself. Her name is Isabella Moreno. She came to this country undocumented. She lied to survive. And I love her for every choice she had to make. Gasps echoed through the hall. He continued, She's not perfect. Neither am I. But she is brilliant, brave, and the reason I'm standing here today. And I will marry her, not to save her, but because she already saved me. The clip went viral in hours. Immigration officials watched it. Senators commented. Activists rallied behind her. But Isabella had seen it first. From a friend's apartment in East Hollywood. Tears streamed down her face. But still, she hesitated. She walked for hours that night. Through back alleys, past taco stands and neon motels. Eventually, she ended up at a small Catholic church, the same place she had once cleaned floors in exchange for sanctuary. Father Emilio recognized her immediately. You've grown, he smiled. Into yourself. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. You're the girl who came here to find dignity, he said. Now you've found love too. Don't lose both because of fear. She stared at the altar, the candles, the silence. By the next morning, she was on the road again. This time, toward home. Ethan was in the garden when she arrived. He didn't say anything. He just walked toward her. Slowly, cautiously, afraid to break the spell. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. "I'm not," he answered. They stood in silence, forehead to forehead. "I'm not running again," she said. "But if I stay as your equal. Not your secret. Not your rescue." "You've always been more than my equal," he said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a velvet box. Inside, the ring he had proposed with. Now returned to him. He looked confused. "Ask me again," she whispered. This time, with the world watching. He smiled through tears. "Isabella Moreno, will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, no hesitation. This time, it was real, and there was no going back. The Carter estate shimmered under the late spring sun. Guests from across the country filled the manicured garden for a press-covered engagement announcement that, for all intents and purposes, was already historic. Not because Ethan Carter, the billionaire recluse, was marrying again, but because the woman standing beside him, in a modest cream suit, her chin held high, had once scrubbed the floors of the very house she now owned half of. Isabella stood at the podium. No paper, no script, just truth. "My name is Isabella Moreno. I came to this country with nothing. Not because I didn't have a home, but because my home stopped seeing me. I crossed borders to find safety, but I never expected to find love." Murmurs spread. Cameras clicked. Behind her, Ethan watched with quiet reverence. "I've been called many things. MAID, illegal problem. Today, I stand before you as a fiancée, as a partner, and as a woman who refuses to disappear." The crowd erupted into applause. Across town, Charlotte Whitmore smashed her wine glass against the marble counter. "He's turning her into a martyr," she spat. "She's going to win public sympathy." Michael sat on the couch, disheveled. "It's over, Charlotte. We should take a deal. Disappear." She turned on him. "Disappear? I was supposed to be Mrs. Carter. That maid stole my life." "No," he said quietly. "She built hers. You tried to steal it." For the first time, Charlotte said nothing. That evening, Ethan received a call from the Department of Justice. They had issued an arrest warrant for Michael Alvarez. Charlotte had been subpoenaed to testify. She was named as a co-conspirator but had struck a cooperation agreement. The condition? She had to turn over every document, every communication, and attend the trial. Isabella was stunned. "She betrayed you. Why would she help now?" "She's not helping us," Ethan said. "She's saving herself." The trial moved swiftly. Michael sat in the defendant's chair, hands clasped tightly. The evidence was overwhelming. Dozens of shell companies, false signatures, recorded phone calls. When asked if he had any final statement, Michael stood. "She was right," he said, nodding toward Isabella. "I thought I could erase Ethan by using someone invisible. But she wasn't invisible. She saw everything. She is everything I'm not." He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. As he was led away, he didn't look back. Charlotte, dressed in black, offered no statement. But on her way out, she passed Isabella in the hallway. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Charlotte said, "You deserved better from all of us." Isabella nodded slowly. "We all deserved better, including you." That night, Ethan and Isabella sat on the estate balcony watching the stars. "Tomorrow's the wedding," he whispered. She nodded. "And not even IC or Michael Alvarez can stop it now." They kissed, not with urgency, but with certainty. The kind of kiss that ends wars. The wedding took place at sunset. Guests sat in two concentric rings around a circle of white roses. At the center stood Ethan, his suit tailored but simple, his heart visible in every glance. A string quartet played softly. The officiant, an old friend of Luis's church in Boston, welcomed everyone in Portuguese and English. Then Isabella stepped forward. Her dress was not extravagant, a cream lace creation handmade by women from a local immigrant shelter. Her veil, of all ironies, was a gift from Charlotte. Quietly delivered, no note attached. The ceremony was intimate, filled with meaning far beyond vows. When the officiant asked, "Do you take this woman?" Ethan interrupted gently. "I already have. Every day since she looked me in the eye and refused to apologize for existing." Isabella's voice broke when it was her turn. "I spent my life hiding. From systems, from borders, from shame. But with you, Ethan, I'm seen. And I see myself. They kissed before the officiant gave permission. The guests laughed, cried. As the sun dipped behind the hills of Los Angeles, a new chapter began. Later that evening, during the reception, Ethan clinked his glass and addressed the crowd. We will be relocating part of Carter International's financial division to Sao Paulo. Not for business, but for justice. There are millions of Isabellas around the world. It's time we saw them. Isabella stood beside him, proud. Dona Luisa approached, placing her hand on her daughter's belly with a soft smile. Does he know yet? Isabella blinked, then laughed. He will. She walked over to Ethan, leaned into his ear, and whispered, We're not just two anymore. He froze, then turned to her, stunned. You mean? She nodded. A pause, and then a kiss, the kind that leaves no questions. That night, as the last guest departed, Isabella returned to the master suite. She stood before the mirror where it had all begun, the veil, the shame, the intrusion. Now, it held a different reflection. A wife, a mother-to-be, a woman who had crossed oceans not just to survive, but to be. Ethan walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Ready to begin again? He asked. She looked at the mirror one last time and smiled. I already have. 6 months later, Los Angeles had changed, or perhaps it was Isabella who had. The Carter estate, once a symbol of isolation and power, now buzzed with new life. The West Wing had been renovated into the headquarters of the Anna Foundation, named after Ethan and Isabella's newborn daughter, Anna Louise Carter. The foundation's mission was simple: to provide legal, psychological, and financial assistance to undocumented immigrants seeking safety and dignity. Every room, every file, every decision bore Isabella's mark. She sat behind her desk that morning, baby Anna sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside her, a gentle sunbeam dancing across the infant's cheeks. Isabella reviewed grant applications, marked immigration policy briefs, and signed off on interviews she'd been requested for, not as the wife of Ethan Carter, but as founder, CEO, and survivor. Across the city, her story had sparked a wave of transformation. NGOs and legal coalitions had replicated her model. Dozens of women, maids, nannies, cooks, cleaners, now had names and stories and hope, because one of them had dared to take back her voice. In the kitchen, Dona Luisa prepared breakfast while humming softly. She often joked that her granddaughter would grow up thinking all grandmothers carried spreadsheets in one hand and prayer beads in the other. Ethan entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee and kissed Isabella's forehead. Board meeting in 30, he reminded her. I'll be ready, she said with a warm smile. She looked different now, not because of clothes or status, but because she stood fully in herself. Grounded, rooted. Later that day, Isabella was invited to speak at a conference for immigrant women in Washington, D.C. Her words would later be quoted by activists and policymakers alike. We were never the problem. We were simply the ones no one wanted to see succeed. But let it be known, invisibility is not the same as insignificance. I was undocumented, yes, but I was always human. And now I am free. The crowd stood in ovation. Back in Los Angeles, the nursery echoed with soft lullabies. Anna's tiny hand curled around Ethan's finger, her breath rhythmic, safe. Ethan watched her, then turned to Isabella. We did this, he said quietly. You did this. She shook her head gently. We chose each other. That's what made it real. That evening, the family gathered in the garden for dinner. String lights swayed gently above them, and laughter rose with the scent of rosemary and baked bread. Friends, allies, former maids turned managers, immigrants turned entrepreneurs, all were present. A community reborn. And later, when the house was quiet and Anna was asleep, Isabella walked alone to the mirror. The same mirror where everything had once begun. No veil, no shame, no fear. Just her reflection, strong, clear, whole. She reached out and touched the glass. I see you, she whispered. And this time, she meant it. A woman with a name. A mother with a future. A leader with a mission. Isabella Moreno Carter. Once invisible, now unforgettable. And this was only the beginning. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Big kiss, and see you in the next story.